Okay, next we have 7 Days Later, a post-apocalyptic game-lit survivor horror written by Riley Morrison. It is 343 pages, $3.99. It's available on Kindle Limited. Here's the author's description. Craft, build, search for loot, and find and fight to survive in a vast post-apocalyptic game world. It's been 7 days since the old world fell, and now my girlfriend's Sayōnara and I must battle for our survival. We'll harvest wood, mine metal, grow our own food, and craft better equipment. Then we build our base, secure it with traps, fortified walls, and defend it till the end. The monsters that ended the old world are out there, hunting the night and gathering into hordes that will attack us once a week. But zombies and mutants are not the only threat. From mysterious enemy NPC factions to hostile player bandits and ravenous packs of wild animals, the open world of 7 Days Later is filled with danger. Only by working together can Sayōnara and I hope to live through the horror. But are we ruthless enough to survive? Grab your guns, tools, and upgrades and enter the apocalypse. So there you go. Full disclosure, I received advance copy for review. I purchased a copy when it became available. This story I don't think really worked for me specifically. And I'll get into why. It's inspired by survival games, which I'm actually a fan of survival games. The game mechanics and story have crafting, food, water, sleep meters that need to be kept up, and there are a wide variety of monsters and people to fight and survive. So I think one of the things that the author really did well was stay faithful to the survival game mechanics. He maybe for me at least, too much to a detailed degree. There are extra base building elements here with homes being built as well and traps defended. And the character progression on the mechanic side is based on equipment. So there aren't traditional levels per se. There are crafting and item equipment progression. And that's not uncommon in survival RPG, like survival game, apocalypse games. But that's the kind of progression here. So you're not necessarily going to have like straightforward, like kill a bunch of monsters, get the level kind of stuff. It's make and craft your own equipment, harvest resources from monsters and things you scavenge. And that's the progression that you get as you build your bases and your traps. You're going to get more powerful based upon your equipment and your actual skill as a player. But there is progression because it does ramp up from super simple tools to more progressively more powerful things as you grab more resources and whatnot and fight tougher enemies. Now, again, the game mechanics are probably the thing I like the most about the story, and that they're very faithful to a specific game here. The author is very open about saying he loves survival horror games and he loves these apocalypse games. In particular, he was inspired by the hundreds of hours he's devoted to 7 Days to Die, which is a specific game. And I haven't played that game, so it's hard for me to kind of judge, but I'm guessing that he pulls a lot of the mechanics and from those experiences there. And for me, while I appreciated the faithfulness to it, for me, the crafting in particular was a little lackluster. And that's mostly just because it was very button pushing in that they gather resources and they already have established list of crafting recipes. And so there really wasn't like a sense of discovery as they explored the game world. In addition to that, character wise, there wasn't really a sense of a real threat in this. And that's one of those, for me at least, defining characteristics of what I like so much about like these survival apocalypse stories, and that the characters feel like they could die any moment permanently, and there's a consequence there's a serious threat and there's serious stakes to them surviving or not, right? And that's more of a storytelling element. It took me a while to figure out how to kind of phrase this, in that this story is so faithful to like this particular game system. It feels like you're watching somebody play that particular game. And that for you as a reader, that might be super amazing. It really would. If you're a fan of 7 Days to Die, I think you'll like this a lot. For me though, I was hoping for more of a speculative storytelling, in that going beyond what currently exists, like making the crafting better, making the monsters and the adventures a little more narratively interesting. And instead, it really just kind of feels like you're watching somebody play a particular game. And if you're a fan of the game, you're going to have a great time with this. I haven't played the game though, so I don't have that same connection to that particular. I didn't have that same connection to that particular story. Eventually, that changes a little bit in the story, in that there are more insidious horror elements that pop up in the novel, but that it still very much felt that way. So for me, there really didn't. I found myself not being as interested in it because again, they didn't feel like there were heavy stakes. Because again, there's no permadeath. You restart your characters, and you have some stat losses. There's some other penalties that are incorporated in the story. But if you don't survive, if you become a monster, it's like, oh, okay, I'll just start an different server. I'll start a new character in the same server. And there are other elements of like, oh, it's painful to die, but that's kind of it. For most of the story, I'm not going to spoil things for people, and that does shift a little bit. And because the characters in the story are already super fans of like this kind of game, they already kind of knew what to do in the story. They kind of knew based on their, even if they don't know the specific mechanics in the story, they knew how to survive. They knew some of the challenges and how to prepare for them. And so there really wasn't even a kind of sense of discovery of the mechanics as the characters went through the gameplay on this game. But again, like all the actual game elements, super detailed, super crunchy, lots of numbers, lots of stuff there. And so if you're super okay with that, I was definitely pleased with the level of detail that the author put into like the actual, crafting and mechanics and stuff. That's all super pleasing. And like I said, the crafting itself, which is a huge part of the story, kind of came off okay to me, not because of lack of detail, just because that it didn't go beyond like the button pressing, like, oh, I have enough wood and I have enough stone, and magically now I have a stone axe. So like there's just like that element of like, oh, a lack of like describing skills of like actually putting things together, which is what I actually like about crafting. I like to see the actual putting together, because it makes me feel like I'm an inventor or I'm doing it or something, which is kind of a draw. I like that aspect of crafting, and that just kind of was missing here, because very kind of button pressing. Like I have the resources I need, press the button, it appears, So that didn't work for me. The story itself kind of slice of life with hints at a deeper secret in the game. Again, crafting and base building are important to the story. It wasn't interesting for me to read about because, again, of the issues I mentioned already, combined with the real lack of stakes in the story and the kind of forced horror ending, which didn't really make sense to me, and it kind of negates some of the other earlier points in the story. The story overall just didn't work for me. And again, that's just me. Nothing negative to say about actual storytelling. On the technical side, nicely done. However, if you like the game 7 Days to Die, you're probably going to like this more than me. And it's, like I said, the author seems to draw a lot from his experiences with playing that game, for better or worse. So for me, it didn't really work, but I think it might work for readers who enjoy that particular game or similar specific kinds of games like that. So that's 7 Days, a post-apocalyptic gamelit survival horror story with a score of 6 out of 10.